All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Banks. I'm the Assistant Director for Career Services, as well as a dedicated career coach for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. And I just wanted to start off by thanking everyone who's here today, as well as any future listeners that may be watching this on YouTube later. Our digital takeout series here is a great opportunity to hear from our USU alums, talk about their experience, and discuss the opportunities that await many of our future and current CHaSS students. Now, before we begin, I want to let everyone know that they can feel free to use the question and answer feature to ask questions for our speaker today. And we also have London monitoring those to ask for after the first part of the discussion. So now I'm just going to turn the time over to Andrea, who's going to introduce our guest today.
Thanks, Joe. Sorry about that delay there. My name is Andrea DeHann. I am the Outreach Coordinator for the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I'm going to take a moment to introduce today's guest, but I echo Joe's sentiments in saying thank you so much for helping us kick off this series for the fall 2020 semester. We welcome everyone who's here with us today or watching in the future. Our guest today is Lindsay Nelson. Lindsay is a CFRE, and she is the Director of Development at the David Eccles School of Business at the University of Utah. She manages a major gift portfolio and oversees annual giving and stewardship efforts. With over 15 years of experience, Lindsay has held roles in all areas of development, including board management, stewardship, annual giving, and event planning. A first-generation college student and scholarship recipient herself, Lindsay's favorite part of her job is helping students obtain their degrees and go on to successful careers, often breaking the cycle of poverty for their families. She also loves building relationships with the many generous donors who support the University of Utah. Lindsay received her bachelor's degree from Utah State University, where she was the outstanding graduate in corporate communications. In 2019, she earned her certified fundraising executive certificate. She has been involved with the Association of Fundraising Professionals Utah chapter since 2016 and is currently serving as president-elect. She also spends her time volunteering at her church and in her children's schools. She enjoys spending time with her husband, 3 kids, and a black lab, as well as hiking, traveling, and reading. Please help me in welcoming Lindsay Nelson to our meeting today. And Lindsay, I would just like to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about your history. Just sort of how you came to your position, and remind us how you chose that current career path, what you like about your job, how you keep up to date with the industry. Fundraising isn't necessarily something that a lot of students at the college level are necessarily thinking about, but it is an area we see a lot of CHaSS students end up helping in some capacity in their roles as professionals. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into it, and thank you.
Yeah, sure. I am excited to be here today. I love Utah State. I tried to get a job there right after I graduated, but there weren't many entry-level positions, so I had to come down to the red, but I still bleed blue. So I grew up in West Haven, Utah. Like was mentioned in my bio, I'm a first-generation college student. So my parents, I didn't really see like a lot of different careers out there. So when I went to Utah State, I was planning on being an English teacher, an English high school teacher, because I like to write, and that's what I had seen, kind of modeled in my life as teachers and secretaries and a small business owner. So definitely did not know about development or fundraising or anything like that going through school. So started out as an English teacher and then took the Intro to Mass Communications class and really liked it and decided to switch over to journalism and corporate communications. And then my senior year, I did 2 internships. I worked for the University Marketing Office with Tim Vitale and Whitney Wilkinson, and we worked on a project called In and Around Logan, where we were really just trying to present Logan as this awesome place to be, so that when students were considering coming to Utah State, they would have all these different resources about what's happening in Logan, which is a really fun project. And then I wrote articles for the newsletter that goes out once a week, and really enjoyed that. I enjoyed one day I was writing about cloning sheep, and then the next day was writing about audiology research and how it was helping kids with hearing issues, and really loved the variety there. I also was an intern for the Utah Agricultural Experiment Station. And for them, I wrote articles for the Utah Science magazine. So definitely a lot of writing, which was really helpful for my career. And then also with the Utah Agricultural Experiment Station, I helped with a small event for donors at the botanical gardens in Kaysville. They were just opening up the smart home, and they were doing a little event to invite donors who had supported that. And so I really had like a small part in helping to plan that event. But that was really a good opening project for me to kind of know a little bit more about working with donors. So then, as I mentioned, I graduated from Utah State, looked for jobs, and wanted to stay in higher education. Really enjoyed helping students get their career started and learning about the different things that are happening on college campuses. So I just applied for jobs at the U, not knowing anything about development. I just applied for positions that had to do with marketing or public relations, and ended up taking a job as a development specialist for the David Eccles School of Business. And in that job, I was mostly doing a lot of event planning and then managing our volunteer alumni boards. So that was a lot of like detail-oriented work and just a lot of coordination and planning. And from there, I have stayed at the business school for my whole career, which is kind of atypical for fundraising professionals. Usually we jump from nonprofit to nonprofit as we kind of grow in our career. But I had a really good boss who provided opportunities for advancement and opportunities to try new things. So along the way, I also started doing more fundraising, like one-on-one fundraising, where I would talk to corporations about sponsoring events, individuals about starting scholarships, and then have kind of just grown. And now I oversee a team that works on our annual giving and stewardship, which annual giving is like the mass appeals or the big letters and the phone-a-thons and texting campaigns and crowdfunding campaigns. And then stewardship is where we make sure that we're thanking our donors, which is probably the biggest part of the job. If you don't thank somebody, it's going to be a one and done donation, and that's not what we ever want. And then I also have a portfolio of major gift donors. So I work closely with donors on where they want to give back to usually their alma mater or maybe their kids' school, which is really fun to watch people who have the means provide it back and then watch it help the students. Let's see, I think another question is, you asked what I like about my job. I love working with people. Every day is different in fundraising because every donor is different. So you can work with a 85-year-old little couple that is so fun, and you ask them where they want to go to lunch and they choose IHOP, and just have amazing stories to tell. And then you're working with younger alums who are just getting their career started but realize the importance of giving back and start off small with smaller annual donations and then continue to grow from there as they see their impact. And then working with foundations and companies, and everything's a little bit different. So it's really great. I've also really enjoyed learning different aspects of fundraising. It's not just one spot is where you fit. You can do a lot of different things. So there's different specialties that you can take on, whether that be planned giving, helping people give through their wills and estates, or like the annual giving or the major gift fundraising. There's just a lot you can do. So it's pretty fun that there's a lot of variety in this career. There's also a rush that comes when you secure a big gift. It's just this like awesome feeling. Then it kind of drives you to keep going and finding that new donor that might be wanting to give. But most of all, I love being the connector. I love being the one who meets these generous alumni and donors, talks to them about their interests, and then connects them with the program of their choice that they want to support. And then I love seeing the students who get the scholarships. We have a scholarship luncheon that we hold every year, and it's just the best feeling to see the grateful recipients talk to their donors, and just know that I had a really small part in that. I maybe can't afford yet to create my own scholarship, but I can help do that connection. So that's really awesome. And then as far as keeping up to date, I am really involved with a lot of organizations, professional development. There are very few nonprofit degrees. As you mentioned, you don't usually go to school to become a development professional. There are a few colleges across the country that do, but really there's a lot of great professional development opportunities. There's a organization that's called CASE. I always get the acronym mixed up, but it's like the Council for Advancement of Student, and then I'm not sure what the E stands for, but it is really helpful for advancement professionals in higher education, alumni relations professionals, and then student-facing people as well. Just a group of like great webinars that they put on and different conferences that kind of help you do, you know, hone your skills. And that was really helpful in my early career, especially learning the different areas of what I do. And then I'm also really involved with the Association of Fundraising Professionals. That is an international organization. And then we have a local chapter in Utah. So it's really nice that you get expert education from the world and can take that and put it into practice. But then we also have a Utah group that meets every month or so, and we talk about the Utah economy and the Utah nonprofit world and how we can help each other, and that helps me like keep up to date with things. And then if anybody's interested in that, there is a young professionals membership that's only $90 a year. So I'd be happy to help connect you to that if you'd like. Anybody can email me if they need to. And then finally, last year I received my certified fundraising executive certification, which basically is you have to have 80 hours of professional development time, and then you take a test, and the test is based on best practices in fundraising. So that just was really kind of a stamp of approval for myself that I do know what I'm doing and that I haven't just been making it up for my whole career, but I kind of know what I'm doing and that I take this profession seriously. And so that's been really helpful as well. And now I'm looking forward to helping kind of up and coming fundraisers and their efforts. Hopefully that answered those questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lindsay. So I wanted to just ask you a little bit more about, you know, kind of the development of what you had to do. You know, what kind of skills would you say are necessary in the area of development, and how did your education at USU help prepare for those?
Yeah, I would say the number one skill for fundraisers is to be an active listener. A lot of times people think, oh, if I'm going to be out like talking and working with donors, I need to be this big extrovert and I need to be always on the ball, amazing personality, pitching the university. And that's not necessarily the case. I think introverts can excel really well in this career just because listening is so important. So learning how to ask like probing questions, learning how to ask really good questions that maybe might help you, like if you're a journalism major, how would you pull that story out to get to the story and to get what you want, to get some good quotes. So you can apply the same thing when you're meeting with a donor. Ask those good probing questions that really let them open up and tell their story and their passion for giving back and the reason they are interested in talking to you about a donation. And then listen. I think sometimes that's kind of overlooked a lot of times, but then you're looking for those pieces where you can connect donors. And then especially if you're looking at like an events role or an alumni relations role or any role, detail oriented is really important. You know, if you're going to send out an email or a mass letter appeal to 30,000 people, you better make sure you have your names right and your Excel columns right. I've messed up before and sent to dear last name instead of dear first name on a mail merge. So little things like that, it makes a big difference to somebody if they feel like they're known by their alma mater and that you address me as Lindsay, not Mrs. Adam Nelson, you know, things like that. And so being detail oriented with your events, with your relationship with your donors, making sure you remember how many kids they have and what happens with each kid when they're at college or different things like that. And then I think just being a people person, being genuinely curious about other individuals' lives. And I have seen some fundraisers that haven't done well because they can't take themselves out of the situation. It's not about you and what you do, it's about the donor and what they're doing for the university. So really like finding love in your heart for these donors, if that makes sense, if that's not too cheesy, but realizing that, you know, of all the organizations that they could give to, they're choosing to give to yours. And just create really good relationships with them, long-term relationships. So whether that's just remembering birthdays or, you know, I don't know how to describe that anymore, but just relationship building is so important. And then one of the best things I learned at Utah State was communication and writing skills. Les Roca, I don't think is there anymore, but he was one of the journalism professors that I had, and I would get my pieces back redlined all over, and he was teaching me how to tighten up my writing. And I'm so grateful for that, because I don't necessarily write press releases anymore. I don't write articles necessarily. I've written a couple for our magazine here and there, but I'm writing emails that need to be succinct and conversational, and kind of like build a relationship sometimes just through emails with some donors. And then I can switch to writing a mass appeal where I'm sending out a email to thousands of people, but I have to be so succinct and get my, you know, don't bury the lead, you don't bury the ask in fundraising. So get my ask up top. And so really clear communication in writing has been huge for me. And just, I've taken those skills that I learned in, you know, journalism and taken it to letter writing, email writing, and then also in writing grant proposals, making sure really they give you 200 words in that box and you want to tell your whole story about why you want them to give. And so you have to pick your words wisely. And so that's really helped a lot. I did not do well in the video production classes, and so I have my younger colleagues help me when we have to do video stuff, but so hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Lindsay. And I think that's an important point you make, that we all sometimes have to lean on others when there are areas where our own skills don't extend to that, but you know, it's a team effort. Can you describe for us the impact that fundraising has had both at the organizational level and the individual level, and why this work, you've started to touch on this, but just to elaborate for us further, why this work is so important to you?
Yeah, I actually remember being at Utah State, and President Albrecht came to, I don't know if I was covering this story for the student newspaper or I just went, but they were raising fees at the university, and he explained to us how there are different buckets of funding at a university. So there's a bucket that comes from state appropriations, there's a bucket that comes from tuition, there's a bucket that comes from private donations, and you know, a couple other things. But at least with the organization I work with, fundraising really drives us to improve and excel. So for example, when my current dean first came, we would get the money from the state and we would kind of just spend it and then hope that next year we got as much from the state. And he decided to privatize our business school. So we essentially really run on tuition dollars and private donations. And it has been amazing to see the results that have happened when we have put more emphasis in fundraising and building relationships and really kind of pushing on the fundraising and alumni relations side. I wish I could like show you this a before and after of our campus, but we were in buildings that were from the 1960s before we started really focusing on this. And now we have 4 new buildings in the last 10 years, mostly paid through by donor funding. So, you know, some people might say, oh, it's just another building. But when potential faculty members come or potential students come and they, you know, can go through a beautiful building with lots of space and windows and light versus the 1960s buildings that, you know, sometimes smelled a little, and so things like that. So, you know, improving the campus is a big thing that fundraising can help with. And then the biggest thing is scholarships. So like I mentioned, scholarships really help us recruit top students. And so it's for us to improve in our rankings and improve as a business school, we need to be offering really high quality scholarships to top students. And at the same time, offering scholarships to students in need. So it helps us, one, recruit top students, and sometimes those students of need are the top students we want to. I'm not saying they're not, but it helps us, one, stay affordable. College education is, you know, it's expensive, and we don't want students taking out so much loans. So a lot of times you'll see the sticker price of how much it is to come get a degree at the University of Utah. And most students, about 30% of our students have some sort of tuition funding and pay quite a bit less than that. So that's really important, just in general, of keeping education affordable because of scholarships through private donations. And then also, there's also, like I mentioned, the buckets of funding. Private donations have helped my organization create new centers and new programs. So for example, we have what's called the Lassonde Entrepreneurship Institute. It's almost 100% fully funded by an endowment that was provided from one of our alumni who wanted to help budding entrepreneurs across campus, not just at the business school. And then we have a leadership center. We have all these different centers that probably we wouldn't have taken like the state money that were appropriated and putting it towards these experiential learning programs for our students. But because the donor comes and says, these are some things I think you could do, we're able to use that money to create value for our students. So hopefully that kind of touches base on the organization level. And then on the individual level, you know, we are really trying to help students afford college. This is probably, I might get a little emotional here, but I was a first generation college student. My parents paid for groceries, but when they came up and visited me in Logan, but tuition and room and board were on my own. And I was so grateful that I had scholarships that covered it for the most part. And then I worked as a janitor to fill in the rest. And so I cleaned those dorms in the summer, and that is like baptism by fire about how to like work hard and that I wanted to have a career not in cleaning dorms. But sorry, I just kind of lost my train of thought there. But when I graduated from college, my first salary out of school was higher than my mom had ever made, and she worked for years and was retired. And I didn't even make that much. You know, this is not the highest paying field out there, but just to help students go and get their degrees and then have that in their toolkit and have that in their background and help them get higher paying salaries and more opportunities is just so important to me. And I'm just really grateful that I get to be a part of it. There are some days where I think, how am I getting paid to do my job? Because I'm just paid to be nice to people and help them do what, you know, help them give to others. It's pretty awesome. Hopefully that answers that question. So
Great. Yeah, no, that definitely answered that. I was going to ask the next question, you know, so like outside of the university, what other organizations and what kind of people do you work with most, you know, and how do you kind of approach them for the first time, you know, for a fundraising opportunity?
Yeah, I think I can answer that kind of, if you picture like a funnel. So we start out with our kind of mass appeals. So we are trying to touch every alum, sometimes parents, sometimes past donors who maybe don't have a degree from us, but they have expressed interest in giving to us. So we will do crowdfunding campaigns, like days of giving. I think Utah State has their day of giving coming up pretty soon, which I give to. I give back. And then we send out mass letters, and we have a phone-a-thon program where we're calling alumni and potential donors and trying to get, though it's kind of like we're fishing, we're putting out the bait and trying to see who is interested in giving back. And then that's where we get a lot of our kind of broad number of donors, which sometimes people think, oh, my $25 gift doesn't do anything. Actually, it does. we give away tens of thousands of dollars in scholarships every year, combining $2,500, $500 donations, and we combine them together and give them out as scholarships. And so that's kind of where we start usually. And then when we get to more of the major giving level, what we look for in our database is people who have been responding to those campaigns for a number of years, who have maybe been giving $1,000, you know, from a mail appeal or on the phone-a-thon. And that's usually a sign like, oh, he or she is interested in giving a little bit more. So we'll call them and I just introduce myself, tell them a little bit about what I do at the university, and talk to them about maybe seeing if they want to go to lunch or meet for coffee or whatever they want to do, and just talk with them. And usually it's an open conversation about what they enjoyed about their time at the university, getting to know them, and then as I mentioned before, listening for those clues. So if they mention, oh, I'd really be interested in talking to students, then we find a way for them to speak to a group. And then usually just talk through like what the various options are. Most donors are pretty flexible. They are wanting to give where the highest need is. And now that we have our buildings we're not living in the 60s anymore. Now that we have that done, our highest priority is scholarships. So we'll talk through that and how they can give, and really just kind of guide them through the process of what opportunities are out there. If it's not scholarships, it might be supporting a student group that wants to go to New York to visit with companies on campus and providing stipends for those students. There's also professorships and endowed chairs where we help professors. That helps us recruit top professors by adding to their salary with that award. So really just getting to know them and presenting them with the different opportunities. Traditionally, we don't talk about gifts on the first visit. It's just getting to know each other and getting to know opportunities. And then throughout, you know, a course of different meetings and different engagement opportunities, having them come to our events, kind of get to know them better, and then present opportunities for them to be involved. You know, once they say, you know what, I really like this technology initiative you have, then I'll just say, well, can we present you with a proposal? And that's where we come back and use our writing skills to really flesh out that proposal and make it persuasive and succinct, and send that back. And then we work with them on, you know, if they want to give over a number of years or if they want to give right away, and then exactly what they want their gift to go towards. So that's really fun. One of my favorite things is finding a brand new donor who maybe just gave, you know, 100 over like the last few years, and then talking them through the process of, oh, if you wanted to give a little bit more, you could direct your money here if you wanted to do this. And people usually love the results of their giving, meeting their recipients. And then, like I mentioned before, following up and thanking them is huge. I think that's probably the biggest thing. It's way easier to retain a donor than find a new donor. So we put a lot of effort into making sure that our donors know their impact and where their gifts are going. So I work with a lot of individuals. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who maybe have family foundations. So that's kind of more like a straightforward kind of way to work with them. We do work with foundations quite a bit. So we will send them a request to see if we can apply for funding. And that's a little bit more of a, they have a process. They might have a certain deadline when they want your funds in. They have certain things that they give for, and they usually have an application that you have to fill out online or in paper. And so that is a little bit more like, here's the project that we're hoping you'll fund, and then they come back with their response and say yes, versus with maybe an individual, it's a little bit more creative and finding the right fit. So that's, yeah, kind of what we do, mostly just build that relationships, start to see where they want to be involved, and then see where they want to start some funding opportunities as well. Hopefully that answered your question. I could go into weird details, but I think that's probably good for now.
Thank you, Lindsay. And before I ask the final question that we have for you today, I do want to remind our participants that they're welcome, you know, at this point to add things to the Q&A feature. Lindsay's going to answer, like I said, one more of our questions, but then we're going to be moving some to questions that we take from the audience. So if you have questions for Lindsay, go ahead and start populating the Q&A, and we will get to those shortly. You know, again, we've kind of touched on this a bit, but since we're thinking about and trying to help either students who will soon be entering the job market, or maybe younger alumni who have recently entered the job market, as a director, you know, you probably have a team of many different personalities and skill sets who are helping you. But what are the different roles that exist within your group, and what types of people do you look for when it's time to hire someone new for your team?
Yeah, we have a team of, I think we're right around 16 right now. So we have a number of major gift fundraisers who their kind of sole focus is developing relationships. They have a portfolio of donors that they work with and renew their gifts each year, and then try to help them maybe grow in their giving, and then also finding new donors to give. I would say generally, people in that role start in one of our other roles, like in our alumni relations role or as a development specialist, and kind of build their way up to having a major gift portfolio. And then we have an alumni relations team, which is, there's about 4 or 5 of them. They are really focused on putting together events and a lot of our mass communication, newsletters, emails, social media, and then we have a group that focuses on annual giving and stewardship. And so all of these roles, and then we also have a data person. So we have a Salesforce trained data team member that keeps our data on track and tracks our giving and tracks our metrics, which is really important and really helpful. So all of those roles, really a lot of communication skills, as I mentioned before. Like we just go through, sorry, lose my train of thought. But really, if you can communicate really well, that's what we're looking for. We don't want to ever have anybody who's going to have a hard time with grammar. I mean, that just takes so much time for us to go through and rewrite an email or redo an email. Like, we need somebody who's just on point and can really get that email ready to go. And of course we review it, and all of it, people review mine, I review my bosses, like we all go through and do that. But really great communication skills. More and more we're looking for people who have more like InDesign skills and kind of graphic design stuff that can help us, you know, put out logos quickly and design pamphlets, brochures, kind of really quickly. I was using Publisher back in the day, and that's just not, I don't even know if that's available anymore to use, but so those design skills are really helpful. And then I would say when we look to hire somebody, we really, really care about your purpose and your passion. Fundraising is not rocket science. I can't even say rocket science. Oh, that's bad. But you can learn it on the job. You can learn how to develop these skills. You can learn how to work with donors, and it's just something you can learn. So we're looking for somebody who really cares about the organization, whether that's higher education or, you know, a nonprofit like a food bank, or you know, the various agencies or hospitals that you could work for. Like, in an interview, you want to show why you'll be able to help that group and why it's important for you to come every day. So often we'll have people interview that just don't know much about our business school, and it's, when you're going to be selling something, you need to know what you're getting into, if that makes sense. You need to really have done your research and show that you know about what the organization does, how they help people, what are some takeaways. And then we work as a team really, really closely, even though we've gotten a lot bigger. The alumni relations team, it's all hands on deck when we're doing a crowdfunding campaign, and when we're doing alumni events, it's all hands on deck helping to get that ready. So we look for a team player who isn't above doing any work, like get in there and help stuff bags for the golf tournament, even if you are working on a multi-million-dollar gift. Kind of have to, like I said, put your ego away and just do what needs to be done, and And then people who can like show really, really good professionalism, writing thank you emails or thank you notes after an interview. That's what we do for our career, is we take somebody to meet with them and then we follow up and do thank yous. And so that's kind of a red flag sometimes if that doesn't happen in an interview for us anyways. I know maybe there's different advice, different things there, but with our organization, show what you're going to do, show gratitude is really big. Hopefully that answers some questions.
Great, thank you so much for answering those questions. My name is London, for those of you watching, and I am the events intern for CHaSS, and now I'm gonna ask Lindsay some of the questions we've gotten from our audience. So the first one I'm gonna ask you is, you come from a humanities background, but you work for a school of business. In the early days of getting hired, how did you sell yourself as a young grad with a degree in PR? And like, what humanities and social sciences classes did you take that helped prepare you for this career?
Yeah, I had no business experience whatsoever. So in the early days, it was, professors would be talking about this stock market thing and this finance thing and venture capital. And I felt a little over my, like I was in over my head a little bit, but just learning it on the job and reading books helped. But I feel like now anything I learned from college, I could take and apply to working at a hospital, working for the School of Medicine, working for the business school, because I don't necessarily need to know the ins and outs of business. I don't need to know the ins and outs of science or whatever I might be promoting as a development professional. I just need to know enough so that when a donor says, oh, I'm really interested in personal financial planning, that I can pull out those key phrases and then I can connect him with the faculty member who is an expert in that field, and then they can run from there on the like nitty gritty stuff. So I think just going back to being a good communicator and listening and kind of just knowing enough, like doing your research and knowing enough so that you know who to connect them to, if that makes sense. Because my expertise is in connecting people, in securing the gift, making sure the gift is used correctly. It doesn't have to be in venture capitalism and things like that. And then what classes I take, I took a class from Troy Oldham. It was a PR agency class where we did, I don't know if we still have that, but we did it was like a field study project for Microsoft, but it was for MSN Spaces, which that like dates me so bad. I don't even think that's around anymore, but it was like MySpace, but for MSN. Trying to do a lot of field work to see if like what people liked about it, what they didn't like about it, kind of customer survey and research. So I don't necessarily do that now, but that was extremely helpful for learning how to work with a group and extremely helpful for working with a client. So being kind of client facing. So I just kind of transitioned that over to being donor facing. So making sure that I'm responsive, making sure I'm understanding correctly what their wishes are and their needs are, and following through and touching base. So that class was really helpful. And then as I mentioned before, the writing classes, just knowing how to like not cry when all those edits came back and really learning how to improve from there were really helpful to making me a stronger writer. I take that a lot, that who, what, when, where, why kind of a thing, and I apply that to the writing I do now and the projects I do now. My internships were huge. They were really helpful. So.
Nice to see that these humanities and social sciences like classes can translate across almost whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
That's super nice. The other question, another question I have for you is, you mentioned earlier how you've been involved with different societies or other organizations like that. So how important is getting involved, or why should I look for opportunities to get involved?
Yeah, I think I have found like a lot of networking opportunities through those organizations. I love where I work, but I don't know that I'm always going to want to stay at the business school. I have other passions too, like if LDS Philanthropies called me and were interested in, you know, an offer, I would be interested in talking to them about that. Other than I might have to fundraise for BYU, which I would have to do some repenting and, you know, go from there with that. But so I want to keep my options open too. So getting involved with those organizations really helps me broaden my network outside of my own organization. So for example, with the Association of Fundraising Professionals, I work with people who are at museums doing fundraising, the zoo, Tracy Aviary, other institutions of higher education. And so I feel like I'm building my network, and which is really helpful if I ever want to jump to a different position. In fact, we've hired a couple of my of the people that are on our board have started working at the business school. So we've seen that happen too. Kind of hurts our diversity of our board when we all start working together, but that's okay. It's good for our careers. And then I think also just learning how other people handle their own roles, if that makes sense. Like, and knowing that I can go to my colleagues and say, okay, I have this problem right now with this donor. What would you do? And they're a little bit removed from the situation, but they know fundraising really well. So it gives me a network of people to talk to and just get advice from, and that's extremely helpful. And then there's just it's really rewarding to be part of helping give back to a profession. So it may not be service like passing out food at a homeless shelter or, you know, helping clean up after a big storm, but you are helping people progress in their careers, and that's really rewarding too, to help them, you know, just give some advice or help them hone a skill set is really awesome. And I think anybody can do that, even if you're a really young professional, because you know what's needed. I might, you know, I'm mid-30s. I don't know what, you know, the questions somebody coming out of college might have anymore, because that's been so long ago for me. So I think just getting involved, you can really help a lot of people at the same time as you're helping yourself.
Thanks for that. You also mentioned that one of the other most important parts that stood out to you was getting your internship senior year and having those. So could you maybe say a little bit more about internships and like why they're so important and how you would go about getting one or looking for opportunities?
Yeah, I think I worked really closely with my advisor in the JCOM department to help me find my internships, and they were huge. That semester that I did those, it was pretty crazy. I was in my like final year of my scholarship, so I was trying to like take 18 credits and kind of knock out as much as I could, so I didn't have to pay for too much college that summer to finish up. But really, it was just working with my advisor, and they would present opportunities to us. And I was telling Joe earlier, I'm not sure I took enough advantage of the Career Center, which knowing what I know now about how much effort is put into helping students, I wish I would have taken more advantage of going and meeting with a coach. And I think I remember like flipping through the books that they had and the different salaries and things like that, but I wish I would have taken more advantage of looking for those opportunities. And I would say that like go for as many as you can. Like I wish I would have started earlier. Most of my internships were my senior year, which maybe, you know, if you can find a way to squeeze it in a summer or another semester, just get as many as you can under your belt to help you, one, build out your resume, but two, know what you don't like and what you do like too. But you can kind of cross things off your list of, I don't really want to, you know, I knew I didn't want to work for a PR agency. I kind of knew like I wanted to work for a higher education. So I think that was helpful just in that route. And then also like professionalism. I feel like I learned a lot of how to work with professionals as I was doing my internships, just by modeling and watching how Whitney Wilkinson handled problems that came up or any issues, and just being able to model their behavior helped me a ton, and you know, helping me mature as a professional. And like I said, like really, I don't think I would have gotten the job that I had I not had those internships and just a slight glimpse into development and event planning. And so hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, I really appreciate that advice. Thanks for that. The last question I have for you is, what advice do you have for those who are new to the professional world and being called upon to write grants or craft stories about their organization? And then also, how can they best develop the skills needed to have meaningful conversations with stakeholders?
Yeah, I think young professionals in general, like, I would be like what we call cheerfully aggressive, if that makes sense. Like, be positive, be a team member, and then aggressively go after projects that you want to take on. I think sometimes, for me anyways, I was a little timid and thought, oh, I'm just a young person. I need to just listen and respect my elders in a way. And then I had a boss who said, Lindsay, you need to speak up. Like, you bring value to the team. We need you to talk more and provide your ideas more. And that was really great feedback early in my career. So I would say, like, look for opportunities, raise your hand when there's a project that comes up. I have one of my employees, this is kind of a tangent, but we were starting this new crowdfunding campaign. We were doing a giving day, which was the first one the university had done. And I knew I couldn't do it by myself. And so I asked for a committee of maybe people that could help with it. And we went through, anyway, she just volunteered her time. She was an event planner for us. And then she volunteered her time to help on that committee planning that giving day. And now she's a full-blown fundraiser, and it really helped boost her career up high to take on extra work that maybe wasn't in her wheelhouse. And now she's leading our annual giving efforts and is doing really great, and probably excelled higher and faster than others that joined the team at the same time, because she spoke up and said that she wanted to help with those projects. As far as writing proposals, I would say just learn as much as you can, listen as much as you can. Your organization, at least at the business school, we have a marketing group. So we have a lot of collateral that we can read through, and then work really closely with the professor or the program manager who's over the project that you're working on. A lot of times I will start the proposal and say, here's kind of a rough draft, and then I'll ask them to help me fill in the specifics. Like I mentioned, I don't know everything about stock markets and this fee and that fee and whatever that professor might be researching, but I can help take the information that they gleaned, kind of like, as I mentioned before, like, you're going to write an article, take all these things that these experts are saying, and then you as a communication professional know how to put that into layman's term. And that's a huge skill that you probably already have coming out of college. It's just taking it different than maybe, interviewing a scientist for an article. Now you're interviewing a professor or, a lead doctor on whatever project you're working on for that funding. And then taking their scientific language or their business language and then putting it into a proposal that makes sense. So working really closely with the experts, but using your skills to, make it readable to everybody. So, and I'm sorry, what was the second part of that question?
And how can you best develop the skills needed to have meaningful conversations with stakeholders?
Yeah, I think just practicing that with everybody you interact with. I think sometimes for me, I was so focused on getting to know them that I didn't share enough about myself, if that makes sense. So I think as you develop into a well-rounded person, and you have your own unique story to tell too, so let people get to know you at the same time you're getting to know them, if that makes sense. Like, put yourself out there a little bit, and if they mentioned a hike that they love to go on, you can talk about your hikes, or I don't know, just general conversation skills. But don't ever feel afraid that because they're a multimillionaire that they won't care about the stories you have to tell too. That makes sense. Like, let yourself be put out there too, and let them get to know you as you're developing that relationship. And I think a lot of times people like to talk about themselves. So like I mentioned before, asking questions that will draw them out and let them talk through their experience with your organization, whether, why they're want to be involved. And so I sometimes have like a list of questions that I do my research beforehand on the donor, whether that's looking up in our database or LinkedIn, news articles, Googling, things like that. So another skill from journalism, but do your research in advance and kind of have some things that, one, you think you can connect with this person on, whether it's, you both lived in the same area growing up, or kind of go into the meeting having some connection points that you feel like you want to make, and then just letting the conversation go from there. And a lot of times when we have young fundraisers start, we go in teams of 2. Sometimes, a lot of times, we're all women in our office, and sometimes men are nervous about meeting for lunch with, a woman that they're not married to, and just what that might look like for some people. There's a concern there. So there's 2 of us that will go and kind of, I don't know, make it less like a date, if that makes sense. Which is always helpful, because sometimes you can kind of banter with each other, and one can listen while the other one is talking about the thing. So, as you're starting in your career, ask a senior fundraising professional if you can join them for one of their calls, and just listening and kind of watching how they handle the conversation is really helpful too. And I still do that. I still go with some of my senior, the team members on my team, and I just listen and find new ways to connect with people. So hopefully that helps.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. It was awesome just to be able to hear your experiences, as well as you have so much great advice for our students here. I definitely want to second the part about internships, and go ahead and do more than one internship and try to get that experience. Plus, it does help you find out what you don't want to do as much as what you do want to do in an experience. So thanks again, Lindsay, for your time here, everything. Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you, Joe. And I agree, Lindsay, with what Joe said. I mean, I have an entire list here of notes that I took while you were talking. You gave so much great advice, and you've really set the bar high for this fall series. So thank you for being our first presenter this fall, and for sharing that with us, and sharing it with our current students who are, trying to explore some of these ideas and figure out the best path to take while they're still in school. I want to make our listeners today aware of some upcoming events. As you know, Lindsay was our first event of the fall, but we do have events happening every other week throughout the semester. And so our next 2 events will include first, Lee Behunen. Even though she was not a JCOM grad, she was actually a speech comm grad. She does work in an area that may be attractive to a lot of JCOM students. Specifically, she is the executive director of broadcast services for Fox Sports, based in Los Angeles. So I think she's going to have a lot of interesting things to share with us, especially in the wake of COVID, and knowing how much she's had to be flexible in her current job. And on October 8th, we'll be speaking with Alan Barlow. He holds both undergraduate and graduate degrees in American Studies from Utah State. He is the CEO of the Cava Public Pueblo Health Center, and he'll be talking about serving his community in a time of crisis. As we know, COVID has, impacted those populations especially. So please join us for these events. Please help me in thanking Lindsay for her time today. And we thank all of you who came and listened and asked questions. Thank you so much for your enthusiasm and for your willingness to learn. And as Lindsay said, and as Joe said, meet with your career coach, Joe Banks. Come to me, come to these events, and learn more about things that you can explore while you're still an undergrad, so that you can learn what you love and what you might not love, and make some decisions before you graduate. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, London, for leading our Q&A today. And with that, we will end our webinar. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time.